everybody, and welcome to On the Bench with Columbus Wired. I'm Dave Wise. And what a ride it was. Columbus did their part in beating Nashville 3-1. But unfortunately, Detroit beat Dallas, and Minnesota beat Colorado, leaving us just 1 point shy for the playoffs.
Yeah, you know, it was a magical season for the Columbus Blue Jackets. I mean, to think that at the end of February, they were the worst team. They were 30th in the league, and we're thinking, oh, well, who are we going to take at number 1? Or who are we going to take at number 2? Something happened. Something changed. Something magical changed with this team. And, to finish the season 19-5-5, they came this close. And, no, not a point. I mean, they finished tied with Minnesota for 55 points. And, but with the tiebreakers, Minnesota moves on, and Columbus starts thinking about next year, unfortunately.
And we kind of shot ourselves in the foot, as you said earlier. The Scott Housen were the ones that said, hey, if something like this happens, it should turn out like this. It kind of backfired on us a little bit, but I think Coach Richards was very appreciative of the season, and as he said in the press conference here afterwards, there was a time that he can't exactly say when it was, but this group of guys became a team.
Well, they're not going to say what it was, but I recall back in it was actually January 31st. It was my dad's birthday. I remember this now. We were playing St. Louis here at Nationwide. We were down 3-0 early in the second period, and Richards pulled Steve Mason. Sergei Bobrovsky came in and was the #1 goaltender ever since. And Bob ends the season 21-11-6. Obviously, has to be the favorite to win the Vezina Trophy. That, of course, goes to the best goaltender. I don't see another goaltender in the league that deserves it. Us not making the playoffs could hurt his chances, though.
And Coach even said something about maybe a possible MVP for Bob. I know that's a long stretch, but you know what? You know what? When you look at that, you look at what particular person helped their team, and he certainly, made this team what it was.
Well, and like you said, I mean, if it wasn't for Sergei Bobrovsky, this team would have been nowhere near the playoffs. And I think a perfect example of this of the season and how the team ended the season was, the talk was that the Jackets were close. They were close. At Easter, they went into the playoffs. They beat Anaheim. That was one of the teams. They beat Anaheim twice, 2 out of 3 times. They're of course, the second seed. They played 4 games with Chicago, lost all 4 of them by a goal. 2 of them, and they got points in 2 of the 4. So they played with the best teams in the league. San Jose, it's a playoff team. They went 3-0 against. They beat San Jose twice by 4 goals. I mean, so there's a lot of positives to bring out of it, but for the Blue Jackets to go on the road with a 6-game road trip and the playoffs hanging in the balance, and to go 5-1, and then come home and get a win against Nashville after trailing going into the 3rd period with 3 goals, including an empty netter at the end, it's unbelievable. And I mean, we talked about the road record. I mean, the Jackets couldn't win on the road early in the season, and going into that last road trip, they only had 5 road wins all season, and they, of course, doubled that in 2 weeks.
In a short time. And another memory that I'm going to remember from this is won the series against Detroit. I mean, there's a lot of firsts that we did that are going to be great to build upon.
Well, 4-0-1 against Detroit. I believe we were 4-1 against Nashville. Those are 2 teams that Columbus never had any success against. And, to do that, unfortunately, the record against Chicago and St. Louis is really what bit the Blue Jackets in the butt. But to finish their last run in the Western Conference in the Central Division with a winning record, that's a first. That's a first for the team.
And we talked about potentially the award for Bobrovsky. What about Todd Richards? I mean, Coach of the Year. There's got to be some case made there that he should get some recognition for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll be in consideration. I think obviously Quenneville from Chicago is going to be in the conversation. Excuse me. Ottawa's coach. There's another team that went from really, really bad there in the playoffs for the East. I mean, the Islanders, the same thing. I mean, a year ago we were sitting here and we thumped the Islanders 7-1. They were headed home with their tails between their legs, and here they are, a playoff team. So I think there's teams. Obviously, I think there's some coaches that probably did more with more, whereas Todd Richards probably did more with less. But I mean, as he said in the post game, this team has really come together. They're playing as a team. They played well as a team, and the bottom line is that bar that's right here is now going to be right here come September for training camp. And you can't have the slow start you had last year, obviously, or this year, I should say. It's only been 1 year, lockout. But bottom line is, game 1 is just as important as game 82, and the bar is now here, and playoffs or bust come next season.
Now we move our attention to a little bit of the off-season stuff. Major thing to do, restricted free agent, Bobrovsky, making $900,000 this year. I for certain he's going to have a very nice career.
I was going to say, I think he's going to get a little bit of a
Just
raise.
a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Sergei Bobrovsky, and I know that the agent for Bobrovsky and the Jackets GM Jarmo Kekalainen, there's been some conversation. He was a great rookie in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia decided, hey, you know what, we got to go out, and they signed Brizgalov, and then he didn't play. And Bobrovsky's the kind of player that needs that repetition, needs to be on the ice. That's what made Steve Mason expendable. And to trade him to Philly, get a backup goaltender for the remaining month of the season, and get a 3rd-round draft pick, it was highway robbery. I mean, it was great. So obviously that is the number one thing on Jarmo Kekalainen and John Davidson's to-do list. Here in the off season is get him locked up long term.
Obviously, some of the other big names that need some attention from the Jackets are Artem Anisimov, Adrian Aucoin, Vinny Prospal, those types of players. What do you think's going to happen?
Well, I mean, obviously you got to get Bobrovsky signed, and then obviously that's number 1. Number 2 is obviously Artem Anisimov. He's a guy who unfortunately was injured quite a bit during the season, some concussions and such, and I guess it was the neck, the last part. But he's a guy who I think is an essential. He was one of the key pieces in the Nash trade last summer. So you got to get those 2 signed. I think a Colton Gillies, and a Como, those are 2 guys that could or could not be back. Those are guys on the back end.
Role players.
Good role players. I mean, Colton Gillies didn't play a lot this year. He only kind of came in because of injuries, but he gave the team depth. And then the other one is Vinny Prospal. And here's an interesting scenario because Vinny Prospal had a gentleman's agreement with Scott Housen, the former general manager, saying, hey, you know what? You can keep playing as long as you want. When you're done, we got a house or we got a job waiting for you. It's a new regime now, so we don't know what's going to happen. I think that Vinny was your leading point scorer with the Blue Jackets. 12 goals, he had 29 assists. So I mean, if he wants to play, I think you gotta sign him. $1 million a year or something. Give him $1 million and
Give an opportunity.
he's your top line right winger this year. How do you not re-sign him?
Was he 38, 39? A lot of guys don't go that old, but you got to put him in the mold of Chris Chelios or Sergei Fedorov. Would you say he was?
Fedorov was here.
Yeah, he's 99 or something.
99, something like that.
Now, some important signings that we did do, just in the last few weeks: Matt Calvert, Cam Atkinson, Mark Letestu, real cogs in this week.
Well, and they keep talking about brick by brick, and these are key pieces of the brick or the puzzle. Cam Atkinson and Matt Calvert played so well together on a line, and they had different centers throughout the season. But the key to these guys, not only their offense, and Cam Atkinson sprained his ankle or had a high ankle sprain in training camp, really wasn't himself this year. Right, he didn't have that offensive spark like he did at the end of last season. But I can remember one of these road games, last week, or during the road trip, where the Blue Jackets were on the penalty kill. And they had Atkinson and Calvert out there with whoever the center was, and they literally controlled the puck for like 30 seconds deep in the opposite zone. So, I mean, not only are these 2 guys that are obviously going to be offensive threats, Matt Calvert's a physical guy, he's going to be one of those guys that can, drop the gloves if necessary, but they're big pieces of the puzzle, and Mark Letestu, same thing. He comes from Pittsburgh. He had that winning culture. He's a guy who has what it takes to keep this team successful.
Scores goals when we need them. And lastly, let's talk real quick about the draft. That's going to be the next event coming up. 3 first-round picks. What do you think we're going to do?
The problem is that you finished you finished, 15th or
Right.
fourth,
Yeah, kinda
so
middle
now
of the
you're
pack,
you're
yeah.
middle of the pack, and we have New York and we have LA's, and both of them are in the playoffs. So you're looking at a middle round, and remember last year LA won the cup and they've picked 30th. So the thing you got to watch out for though is these are assets that maybe we package two and move up. You never know.
Because we're just a couple of pieces away right now.
But I mean, if you ask me who are we going to go, I don't know. I mean, this team's pretty solid right now, and I think that when you look at it, I think at this point you have to add depth at the wing position because you're deep at center, you're deep at defense, maybe a goaltender. Although Oscar Danik is a goalie that we picked up last year that could very well be moving his way up. It'd probably be the AHL next year. So I mean. At this point, it's about depth, and like I said, you got Yarmo out there and JD. You don't know what kind of move they
I'm
make.
sure something cool is going to happen. Well, as you see behind us, unfortunately, they're starting to tear down the penalty box.
It's a sick, it's a sickening feeling. There's I have two thoughts on this. 4 months ago, we were sitting there going, there may not even be a hockey season. It was, we're going into Christmas, we're going to New Year, we're going into the first week of January, and it looked bleak at best. This was bonus hockey. I mean, that's really the way you look at it. And I mean, okay, so let's say there'd been a lockout, the Blue Jackets would have been 30th, they would have maybe had that first chance at the #1 pick, depending on the lottery and all that. But I think that the foundation for this team, what we saw, especially over the last 2.5, 3 months of the season, really has given this team, or given this city, the city of Columbus, hope. I mean, and like we said, the bar is now high as far as what this team's going to do, and anything but playoffs next year is going to be a failure. And remember, we're going east. We're going east.
That's right.
We get to play, we get to play Florida and Tampa and Ottawa, and we get to play teams that we match up better against. And okay, yeah, we still got to play the Rangers and the Flyers and the Flames, but I mean, how is that any different than playing Detroit, St. Louis, Nashville, and Chicago? It's all about going out, being the better team, and scoring more goals than your opposition. And with Sergei Bobrovsky in here, I think we're going to be okay.
We got a chance every night.
Got a chance.
Well, that's it for now, guys, and we'll see you very soon, probably before the draft. Until next time, I'm Dave Wiseman for Dave Seaman. Take care.